This shameful font of indifferentism gives rise to that absurd, erroneous proposition which claims that liberty of conscience must be maintained for everyone. It spreads ruin in sacred and civil affairs, though some repeat over and over again with the greatest impudence that some advantage accrues to religion from it. So in looking at that, and that's from one of the papal encyclicals by Pope Gregory the 16th.
Okay.
It made me think of kind of the underlying of the soul of Freemasonry, you know, that essentially what their fundamental claim is that all religions, all belief systems are equal. They're equally valid. They're equally valuable. In fact, the only thing that they would say is belief in nothing is the only thing that's of no value.
Wow. Yeah. Now, would that be similar to saying that everything is relative, or like, relativism, when you
Oh
say,
yes, yeah.
you know, what is it? Basically that, nothing is fundamentally true, right? Like
Right.
everything sort of, there's many ways to find truth, or that there's many ways to get to the truth. Is that what we're talking about? Or
Yeah, well, one of the things I'd say is if all options are equal, if all options are equally valid, equally valuable, and if all options will take you to the same place, then really all options are kind of not valuable at all. And what it does, it kind of leads society to talking about Masonry, and their relativism, it kind of brings society to this point of like a de facto agnosticism,
right,
you know,
right, right.
and
Now,
that's where we
and
find ourselves.
okay, and now for people that don't know what agnosticism is, can you kind of explain that? Because
So simply put, an agnostic is somebody who is confused, and confused in the most confusing of ways. They say that they can't really make a definitive claim as to whether God exists or doesn't exist,
right,
and at the same time they can't make any claim to say that another person's claim of God's existence is valid or invalid, or invalid, you know.
right, right,
So an agnostic is just it's a very confused person.
right. Very confused. And so, how do you how do you think Freemasonry sort of fits in with our modern age, right? Like, in today's age and time, like, because I hear what you're saying, and it sounds like to me, like, well, that sounds a lot like how I think a lot of us who may not even know about the Freemasons or anything like that feel today, right? Like, we
Right.
don't want to, you know, we don't want to offend anyone,
Mm-hmm.
right? We don't want to step on anybody's toes, and so therefore we if somebody asks you, well, do you believe God exists, a lot of times what I hear is, well, I don't know, right? Or I'm agnostic, right?
Right.
uh and so for me, it's more like a sort of willful passivism, like, not going to I'm not going to say anything about that, because if I say I believe in God, or furthermore, if I say I believe that God has a particular nature, right? That the nature of God is this way, right? Or that, like, say, I believe in the Trinity, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, right? That is somehow offensive to someone else who may not be of that, who may not be of the same religion. right? And
Right.
so it sounds like to me Freemasonry is sort of an early form of that, an early form of relativism, right? An early form of pacifism, an early form, and I'm not saying that people who are pacifists are totally like, people who choose to be passive are always doing that.
Right.
I think, I mean, I'm passive sometimes. I think we're all passive sometimes,
Well, I think there's a big difference um between like let's say that you see that you see somebody on the side of the road getting mugged.
Mhm.
I think there's a big difference between the bystander that looks at that and says, "Oh, I'm not going to get involved because I don't really even know what truth is."
Right.
You know,
Right.
I don't know, the situation might justify it, and at the end of the
Right.
day, I really don't know what is right and what is wrong.
Right.
There's a big difference between that kind of person and then somebody who just says who's a true pacifist and says, I believe in no violence ever, including violence to stop violence.
Right. Right. Yeah. So okay. So there's a
You
distinction
know,
there. And yeah.
and I think that's what's plaguing our society today
Right.
is people who do not, they don't have, they have a they have a confused concept of reality.
Mhm.
They're confused from the inside to the outside, up and down and left and right. They don't they don't know what truth is,
Right.
and at the end of it, like that's the big thing plaguing our society, and a lot of that was what was codified and brought into our society by the Masons.
Okay. Okay.
One thing that I'd like to bring up, just to back up a few hundred years,
Please. Yes.
is if you go back to the origins of modern Freemasonry, it goes back to Great Britain, it goes back to the United Kingdom,
Okay.
and it was founded in 1717. Is the year that's kind of universally agreed upon that modern Freemasonry was established. Now,
Okay.
there are some people that argue with that, but they all kind of settle somewhere around 1717.
Okay.
And what I would say is that Great Britain was the right soil for Freemasonry to develop as a result of the Church of England.
Okay.
Now, if you back up about 150 years prior to 1717 into the 1500s, you have the whole deal with King Henry VIII, and he was beheading his wives and everything. The Pope wouldn't grant him a divorce, so he ended up splitting with Rome.
Right.
Well, what he ended up doing was he became the leader of his own Protestant church, the Church of England, and the Church of England was very different, and still to this day it's very different from all the other Protestant churches, even from the Orthodox churches. And I don't want to dwell too much on it, but the big difference is, and this was codified by his daughter who became queen, Queen Elizabeth I. She said, we are not interested in peering into men's souls.
Wow. Okay.
That they do that the Church of England, um very early on, they established the principle, they're not really concerned with what you personally believe.
Right.
As long as you kind of go with the flow and everything, what
Right.
you follow what the church tells you, that's fine.
Right.
But it doesn't really matter what you personally believe, and that kind of established a very relative thing. And the reason that they did that was people who still held Catholic beliefs, people who held more Protestant beliefs, that was a way that they could bring them all together. But what they had to do is they had to universally devalue everybody's point of view to make it equal.
Okay.
And
Right.
so the Church of England kind of, adopted relativism.
Right.
So you already kind of had that. So you already had that environment, that kind of intellectual and spiritual environment in England.
Mhm.
Not just England, but in the United Kingdom.
Right.
And the really interesting thing is the Church of England, the Anglican Church, was the official church of obviously the official church of the British Empire.
Right.
And Masonry went wherever the British Empire went.
Wow.
So along with the Anglican Church, so Freemasonry is what impregnated our culture, which goes straight back to Britain. Freemasonry is what impregnated our culture with this air of relativism. For the sake of peace, saying that all points of view are equal. And the thing is, that's still, it's a uniquely English taboo to talk about politics or religion with company. That's not a taboo.
Yeah.
Don't talk about
politics, religion at the dinner table, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, that's a uniquely English taboo, and if you really think about it, that's based upon the English the English acceptance of relativism.
Okay.
Wow. For the sake of keeping the peace.
Right. For the sake of...
And so that's permeated our entire culture, and many cultures around the world.
Right. Now, okay, now let me ask you this though, because there was I know that there's the Freemasons within the UK, like Scotland and England, right? And but there's another form, isn't there, like from like the mainland, like the continent, Europe, which is like the Orient or
yes,
something?
yeah, I think they're called the Grand Lodges of the Orient.
Grand Lodges of
and yeah, and those are the lodges that are found from France to Russia, and really even throughout the world. Now, in former British colonies, you would find the English version of Masonry, which would, but so it's really interesting. The Masonry that you would tend to find on the continent of Europe is the type of Masonry that, like if you go back to the 1800s and you look at the writings of some of our founding fathers who were Freemasons, people like Thomas Jefferson and I think James Madison or it could have been Monroe. But anyway, if you look at what their writings about Masonry, and these guys were major Masons. They actually looked at French Masonry and they called it continental Masonry is the way that they refer to it in their writings. They looked at it, and it actually kind of scared them because of how radical it was.
Right.
And
right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's very radical. People that are very much willing to initiate violence against other people to carry out their mission of bringing relativism throughout the entire society, to overthrow the ruling class of the clergy, and they would even be willing to kill them. Right. Now my thought as to why the Continental Masons, the Grand Orient Masons, were so much more radical, and still are really their own unique animal today compared to the English ones, is that the English already were relativists.
Okay.
Now if you look at like pre-revolutionary France,
right,
that whole country was a bulwark against relativism.
Right.
From the kings, the clergy, everybody, like, a very, very Catholic country.
Right.
And then you can even look at Russia. The czars were not fans of Masons. The Russian Orthodox Church, that at least for the ideas of Masonry, that was a big no-no. So Masonry very much, they had to operate kind of in the shadows of society.
Right.
And they were working to overthrow the existing order to establish a new one.
Right.
And in the British Empire, on the other hand, they already had a relativistic environment that they could kind of work with, or that they could work within.
Right. So now I'm gonna say this because you know one be, do you think that the French Revolution was brought about by Freemasons, or maybe I'll put it another way. Do you think people that were intellectuals in the 18th century in France, continental Europe, were members of the Freemasons, and it's from that sort of that fraternal order or that brotherhood that you get
Mhm.
uh, um, a lot of these writings and stuff like that by Voltaire and like
Mhm.
Rousseau, or do you think that Freemasonry was came first and then they adopted them? You know what I mean? Like where they was like Freemasonry, like this thing where it was like the coffee houses and stuff like that, and they're sitting there talking and going back and forth, or I mean,
Well, what I'd say is this: I don't think that there would have been. I don't think there would have been an enlightenment without the Masons.
okay.
And I'd say without the Enlightenment, you would not have had the French Revolution. You wouldn't
Right,
have had the Italian Revolution,
right,
or the Italian revolutions. Well, and there were also French revolutions too.
right,
Um,
right.
but but I don't think you would have had those without Freemasonry,
Okay,
because remember, kind of the hallmark of Masonry is the idea that you is that all belief systems and religions are equal.
right,
And what that does is it elevates the level of man. It elevates man's unbridled will,
mhm,
which really, when you get down to it, it kind of it it looks to reason as being um the sole means of navigating through reality itself, your human reason is the thing that creates truth,
right,
you
right,
know.
right, right.
um in fact, at the time of the French Revolution, there was a like our Statue of Liberty.
Mhm.
Lady Liberty is actually based upon um the the they called her the goddess of liberty during the French Revolution.
Right,
But so you can Google goddess of liberty, and you'll find Masonic murals and stuff from the time of the French, and political cartoons from the time of the French Revolution. You can also look up I think I'm not sure how it would be pronounced in French, but her name is Marianne, which
okay.
it's spelled Marrienne. I think it's how it's spelled.
Mhm.
But that was the goddess of liberty during the time of the French Revolution. And a lot of the time it would usually be a prostitute that they would dress up in a tunic,
Right.
and they'd put
Yeah.
a crown on her.
Okay.
Yep,
With
yeah,
the
they'd
red.
put a crown on her, and they would have her carry a torch.
Right. Okay.
And the torch was to represent the fire of the human mind, of reason.
Wow. Wow. See.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so the thing is, I mean, so the thing is, I think if we want to understand the world that we live in today, and the worldview that all of us were brought up in,
Mhm.
no matter what our religious beliefs are, I mean, that's kind of the cultural ooze that we rise out of,
Right.
is the result of the Enlightenment, which comes from the Masonic belief system.
Right. Right. But now, what if somebody said this? They say, well, man, like Freemasonry really doesn't um have a, how should I say this? Freemasonry as it is today really doesn't have an effect on our society today, right? Like everything that say was that came out of the Freemasons, that's all from like the 18th century and stuff like that. Why should we be? worried about the Freemasons today, when they're sort of like, yeah, they're a secret society and things like that, but they don't really, it's just like any other religion, right? It's just
Yeah.
like it's just like voodoo, right? It's just a little spooky, or it's a little secretive. You don't really know what's going on in the lodge. I don't I don't want to open the door to the lodge, but I maybe they're doing something weird in there, and that's okay. I'll pass by it. It doesn't really affect me. Um, what do you say to people who think that?
Well, that the relativism
Mm-hmm.
that is the very breath of life
Mm-hmm.
to Western civilization today,
Mm-hmm.
that it uniquely was born of the Masonic tradition.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'd say is, if you want to understand a disease, you have to diagnose it. You have to have an idea of what the origin of a disease is. You
Right.
have to have an idea of what the
Pathology.
symptoms are, so you can treat the symptoms, and
Right.
so that you can root it out,
Right.
and you can fix it. Yeah, so that you can begin the healing process. One
Right.
thing I'd say about human beings in general, though, is history is really the story of ideas realized.
Okay.
So the thing is, in many ways, we can look at the French Revolution, and we can think of that as being the symptoms, and we can look at secularism, and we can even you can even go down the road, and you can look at the Russian Revolution, at World War I. You can look at so many things that have happened
Mm-hmm.
as a result of the Enlightenment, bad things that have resulted that have been that have been a result of the Enlightenment. And
Yeah.
you can think about those things as being the fruits of the tree
Mm-hmm.
of of relativism,
Mm-hmm.
which in our modern era, it's born of Masonry.
Mm.
So the key is to take on that idea, to take on that
Right.
ideological system.
Right. Right. To hit it,
So
you're trying to understand you're trying to get to the pathology, right? Like
mhm,
you want to understand the pathology, right?
yep.
And so you need to understand where these things come from in order to uproot it, right? And that I mean that makes a lot of sense. I mean, but here's my thing. Why do you think that people in France and in England were so keen to have these secret societies like the Masons? Is it because you think they had a maybe how should I put this? Maybe they had a disdain or a envy. You know, they were envious of the upper echelons of society. They were envious of the church and the
Mhm.
church's role in society, and they were using, and that masonry was a sort of vehicle in order for them to like try to rationalize their envy and their jealousy or what have you. I mean, or am I getting that wrong? Like, does that make sense?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And the thing that another thing that Masonry brought to the table, along with relativism,
Mhm.
is materialism.
Okay.
The idea that kind of, the true measure of success, the true measure of quality is quantity. It's at least material quantity. And
Right.
that's the overlap that Masonry has with communism, and that's really about the only overlap that the two have.
Okay.
It is the fixation on the material good.
Right.
So Masonry would say that economics needs to be liberated from everything else, because in pre-enlightenment Europe, uh when the nobility and the church, um and the church controlled, or ran society,
Mhm.
they would say that that quality of life and wages need to be fair.
Okay.
You know, that that economics, now that's not to say that everything was top down controlled, because it wasn't. In fact, if you look at the canon law from the time of the church and things, it actually fostered quite a bit of economic liberty. That we in many ways it would be a more a more a more liberal order than
Right.
what we have in America today. You
Right.
know, but it was all within, rather than pursuing the material good, it was more couched in pursuing the human good.
Mhm.
Um, now when you go to the period of the French Revolution, and you also look at the revolution in Spain, the revolution in Italy, and all these different places, the whole argument used by Masons and by communists was look at your material conditions and compare that to the material conditions of the cathedral, or the material conditions of the king, or the material conditions of these landowners, or something.
Right.
um you should that should be your lifestyle. Your lifestyle should not be living on a farm.
Right.
You should be living in a palace.
Right.
And through our system, you too can live in a palace.
Right. Right. Right.
But the thing is, that was a lie, and that lie was told to get those people to overthrow the existing order.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like well, man, heck, it's like s- the snake in the Garden of Eden,
Yes.
right? Like I'm telling well, why can't you eat that fruit? Why
Yeah.
can't you have that knowledge? Why can't you have the knowledge of, between good and evil, right? Why can't you have abundance? Why can't you have it all? You know, and so that, I mean, that's a really good point. But the thing about it for me is like, why is it that masonry has this disdain in particular for, has this disdain for Christianity,
Hmm.
right?
Oh,
But
yes.
in particular, it has a disdain for Catholicism, right?
Yes.
It's
It hates Catholicism, and that's because whether you're a Catholic or not a Catholic,
Mhm.
you have to admit that out of all the groups of Christians in the world, the Catholics are I mean, they're the biggest.
Right,
And not only are they biggest within certain nations, they're the biggest globally. And the
right,
Catholic Church, it's a universal organization.
right.
And so Masonry looks at the Catholic Church with disdain, because everything that Masonry stands for, which relativism,
Mhm,
the elevation of man's reason above all things,
mhm,
the the you know the enshrining of the goddess of liberty, and all these things.
mhm,
The Catholic Church, I mean, you can't be any more at odds with Catholicism, or Christianity in general, but you can't be any more at odds with an organization than with Catholicism. Catholicism teaches that right now Jesus Christ reigns as king,
mhm, mhm.
and the Masons cannot stomach that. Because the thing is, if you're an organization teaching that Jesus Christ reigns from heaven right now as king,
Mhm,
and he is working through his body to bring true liberty to all
mhm,
people of the planet,
mhm,
through conforming their wills to his own,
mhm.
then, well, that's completely antithetical to relativism.
Right. Right,
you
right.
know
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, man. And it never, because I always, like I said before, like I think when people come to this, they hear about the Masons and stuff, they just want to know about the secret stuff. They want to know about the who, and
yes.
that's what we'll get into this. That's what David Gray,
Yeah.
who we both talked about before, was a former Mason. He was talking about, this is where a lot of people get tripped up, is people want to know about the who. They want to know about the details. Like, you know, are you a blue Mason or a red Mason, or do you wear this kind of cap with this emblem on it or something? And he's like, you know, what they're missing is it's the what, you know, that they're missing. They don't see how how even if you don't know the history of Masonry, if you join the Masons, you'll begin to see, you know, what it actually does to you, you know, as a
Mhm.
person, right? Like how it creates this sort of, you know, I don't know if hubris is the right word or whatever, you know, this sense of self-pride, you know, and
Yeah.
sort of putting yourself above, you know, everything else, right? Um, but you know, I mean, I know that, you know, it's not important to necessarily talk so much about, you know, the who and the little details, right? But um, you know, there is a particular part of masonry that, you know, it's symbolism, right? Which is the you know, we were talking about this last time, the apron, the white
Yes.
apron, lambskin, right? And also um another thing I want to put out there is the idea of like the chisel or the mace and the like the hammer or
Mhm.
something like that, you know. And this idea that as a craftsman, you yourself are crafting those ideas or crafting that you know, architecture or something like that,
Right.
right? And so you don't need a deity. You don't need God, right? And
Right.
you know, you don't need Jesus to um to to help you through life, right? That
Yeah.
you can sort of figure out these things on your own. And if you just, you know, if you just explore and you try to gain a lot of wisdom and stuff. And I noticed that like Masons are very attached to this idea of like Solomon and wisdom. I don't, maybe it's not
Mhm.
necessarily Solomon, but it might be you had said it before and I can't remember the name.
Oh, Kabbalah or
No, it was something Abiff.
oh, Hiram Abiff.
Hiram Abiff, right? And I'm thinking like, first off, why are the Masons so attached to Hiram Abiff?
Mhm.
Why are they so attached to these ideas of like the lambskin and, you know, this, you know, like all these things that are symbolic of a Mason, right? Like why use these symbols to sort of I guess attract people, you know, make them attracted to wanted to be a Mason, you know, because I mean, Masonry is definitely a secretive thing, you know, and
Yeah.
I think having that sort of secrecy and having those symbols and things like that, it does make people in a way want to join them, you know, especially you know, if you're a young man, you know, and you're trying to you know, go up the ranks in society and you want to be, you know, you want to be big man, you know, you want to
Yep.
be known, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to work toward higher status. Yeah.
Right, right, you know, you want to work towards higher status, you know, and all of those things. Why do you think they're so um why do you think there's such an attachment to all of these sort of sort of ideas and stuff like that, like sort of the Bible and everything else?
Oh, well. So looking at the tools, I'd say that is a that actually that would predate the the official founding of modern Freemasonry in 1717
Right.
when Masonry was originally a guild.
Okay.
And you mentioned David Gray
Right.
earlier,
Right.
and that's something that David Gray talks about is when Masonry, or I'm sorry, when Masons were a class of people of artisans in the Masonic Guild,
Mhm.
they would travel a lot. And they would work on palaces, cathedrals, big buildings, and all kinds of things. And they had that unique ability to really to make stone come to life,
Okay.
and they also had the ability to design temples and to
Right.
design palaces and everything. And they kept all that, and they kept that body of knowledge very insulated, so that to increase their.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that David Gray says um that they developed in their philosophy over time was that they would deal with many different kinds of people. And that's when they began to adopt to adopt what we would call relativism, as far as people's belief systems go, religions and things. um but the thing that they would say was objective, or the things that they would say were objective, were the skill sets and the
Mhm.
tools, because that's how they made a living.
Okay.
So those were the only objective things in life, and everything else was kind of fluid around them.
Right.
And everything, and over time, Masonic philosophy would say that everything else should conform to the only thing that was objective, which was the craft.
Right.
and
Right.
and and then and then over time it was kind of allegorized and stuff, after like the official founding of Freemasonry in 1717.
Right.
um but the thing is, you had this focus on the material good, by being able to derive an income from these tools. Now, one connection that I just thought about. I'm not sure if this is an actual connection or not, but in Marxist philosophy, they say that um that economic eras
Mhm.
are defined by the tools of the time.
Okay.
Like Marx would say that feudalism came about because the sickle was developed.
Right. Okay.
Because of the tool sets that ordered society into feudalism, and that the steam engine ushered in capitalism. Because it made capital, it made factories and machines and things,
Mhm.
so productive.
Right. Right.
um and or and so the thing that's interesting is in both philosophies, which have a lot of similarities, but are also kind of at odds with one another, because one of the first things communists usually do whenever they take power is they ban Masonry.
Right.
you know
Right.
but Masonry, it is one of the tools that was used to bludgeon against the old order,
Right.
to open it up to allow communism to take over.
Right. Because
But
masonry. Yeah. Because is that because masonry is? Does Marxism have a critique of masonry because masonry is hierarchical in its nature, or?
because remember, like, um what we call laissez-faire capitalism today
Mhm.
is very much a Masonic idea.
Okay.
That you're to liberate the markets, and
Right.
that the markets are supposed to control society,
Right.
not the invisible hand of the markets are supposed to control society,
Right.
rather than the hand of God.
Right. Right.
Like, that's a very Masonic idea.
Yeah.
you know
Wow. Wow. Man, so much of this is like opening up to me. I never, I never took it. I never took it that seriously. You know what I mean? I really didn't, because I really didn't see the connection, to all of this. But now it's like I'm really starting to see the connections to this. But now let's get to our brother David Gray,
Mhm.
because he explained a lot of things about why he left uh masonry. Now this guy, this brother was really deep into masonry, right? you
Yes.
know I mean, he was he had, I think he had initially joined a lodge or something like that in Ohio, or something like that, right? And he started moving on. Now and keep in mind, he's also, for our listeners, he's an African American guy. I mean, which is not that important. But it is in this sense, because I think uh Shane, you can explain sort of this idea of segregation within the Masonry, right?
Hmm.
But you know the thing about it is like he had gone up the ranks, in Masonry, and I mean like really to the point of like being, at first it was what was it, a worshipful master or something like that,
Yeah,
and
and I think a worshipful master is the head of the of the blue of a blue lodge, which the blue
okay,
lodges are kind of the rank and file lodges,
okay,
just kind of the basic
okay,
um Masonic lodges, which have
okay,
3 degrees.
okay,
I,
okay,
I don't I don't remember exactly what the degrees are, but
yeah,
there are 3 degrees. I know one's called Fellowcraft, another one's Apprentice, and then another.
okay.
Oh yeah, Fellowcraft, Apprentice, and Master Mason is the the top one out of the 3. But I don't remember what the sequence is below that.
Right. Okay. Well, then, so he goes from that, right? He goes from worshipful master, and I know that's a funny term, and it does sound kind of funny, but
Mhm.
anyways, he goes from worshipful master, right? And then from worshipful master, he goes to high priest or something like that, right? And he just kept going up in the ranks in this organization,
He became like the regional head over Ohio, I think, or something, didn't
yeah,
he?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I forget what he called his, what did he call his, they were called the uh
Or are you talking
Prince
about
Hall.
yeah, the
Yeah,
Prince
like
Hall
the
lodges?
name,
Yeah,
yeah, the name of his group is like the Prince Hall Lodges, right?
yeah.
And and you know, he was saying that like, over time, you know, he had like really had this really like he could it sounded like he could accept every other religion, right? But the one religion he could not stand was Christianity, right? Because Christians really do put their faith in Christ,
Yeah.
right? And he said that one time he went to this lodge, and there was this guy who was who was um who was a Christian. I don't know if he was I don't know which denomination he was a part of, but he was a Christian. And he said, in the lodges, everybody, they say their prayers and stuff, and they also have like a creed too, bro. I didn't know that, right? So, you know, I mean, they really have, when you think about it, I mean, it is like it is a religion, bro, because
Yes.
they have everything that you could think of as far as like what a religion, an organized religion is. They have that. You know what I mean? They have the leadership, they have the creeds, they have a book of prayers, and all this stuff. But he said the one one time I went to this lodge, and this guy said the last prayer he said was in Jesus' name. And he said he said I had the most disdain out of all the people was for that guy. It was for Christians, because I couldn't stand the fact that they were weren't being deists. He wasn't
Mm,
being a deist. He was
yes.
planting his foot on this is what I believe. This is what I stand on. But he said that was the moment that I began to question Freemasonry, because that guy,
That's
was,
incredible.
yeah, he said I couldn't believe that. But and he said now, that I look back at that, he's like, I don't see how Christians, I don't understand why Christians are so weak in today's society. And maybe, and I'm just kind of like paraphrasing what he
Yeah.
says, but he was basically saying like, I don't understand why Christians are so timid about their faith, right? And when I look at that, I'm like, he's telling the truth, because when you think about it, think about all the other religions, right? You every other religion, when they say they believe in that, they don't care what you say. They will stand on that, you
Yeah.
know, especially, I'm gonna tell you, and this is this is some admiration here, especially Muslims.
Yeah.
You will not, if they say they believe in God, there's no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger, they believe that. And you won't find them, you know, I'm sure, you know, maybe you might find some of them in the Masons and stuff like that. But if they're a true believer, you will not find them in the Masons. But he said you will find even some Catholics who will join the Masons. You know, you will find even clergy and bishops who may not be a part of the Masons, but they've taken on the ideologies of
the ideas.
right, like the relativism, the humanism, the, you know, all of that, right? You know, the modernism, and you know that he began to really take the idea seriously that maybe he was you know going that's he said he became a lack like a just a simple Mason at that time. You know, by that time, he just kind of like dropped from it, right? And then he said, you know, he started, um, you know, because Masonry and the Masons believe that, like, you know, there's no real truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you can just, so if there's no real truth, well, then that means I can kind of cherry pick, and I can get into all this stuff, right? So he started talking about how he um started delving into a lot of stuff that was close to, you know, stuff like witchcraft and, you know, things of that nature, and it really led him down like a dark hole, you know, like a rabbit hole that just
Yeah.
kept going, you know, darker and darker, right? And so, you know, that's where I think, you know, we can talk about how, you know, modern culture, right? Like you think that entertainment and all that stuff is just like, it's just sounds and it's just music and it's just, you know, for fun. And you know, you can delve into anything and learn about this, and I'm going to go to this place and learn about these people and stuff like that. And I'm like, you know, he has a point, dude, because you know, you can eventually get to a point to where stuff like that takes over your whole thinking process. And you know, it's hard to, like, it's hard to get out of it, right? Now, this is of course, you know, this is me talking, and it's
Mm-hmm.
funny because it's like, you know, we're talking about this, but I'm still talking. The way I'm talking right now is still a modernist, rationalist way of speaking. Because notice, I'm not saying anything about angels or demons. I'm not
Right.
saying anything about spirits.
Yeah.
I'm still explaining it in a way that I feel like people would uh would digest it, instead of saying no, it's demonic, right?
Yeah.
It can lead to the demonic, right? So, you know, but that's the truth. I believe that. You know what I mean? I believe that, you know, it can do that. And I, you know, and yeah. So yeah, go ahead, please.
You know, so at the end of the day, I think the question is, you know, so all of us as humans, we all have our own will, right? And so the question is, what are the things that are shaping our wills?
Mhm.
And in our in our culture, and I think for a very long time, a lot of people, you know, especially a lot of Christians
Mhm.
will say, oh, I don't listen to raunchy music,
Mhm.
um because I'm a Christian, because they think for some reason it makes their halo glow brighter, you know.
Right. Right.
or or they'll say, oh, I'm not going to use bad language, you know,
Right.
because it just, it shows off how pious and good I am, and
Right.
and then their halo glows even brighter, you know.
Right.
But
Right.
the thing, you know, the thing where that line of thinking really misses the mark is, what impact is the raunchy music having on your soul? What impact is that having on your will?
Mhm.
And the thing is, your will is constantly being conditioned,
Mhm.
you know, to be drawn closer to the things of God, or to
Mhm.
be repelled from, you know, away from the things of God, and more toward relativism. You know, you might, you know, it might make you more open to using a Ouija board, or something like that, you
Right.
know, which gets you into pretty scary territory, really, you know. But the question is what is it doing to the state of your will? Because
Mhm.
the thing is, your will in many ways is the compass that you're going to use to navigate through society. And you know, it's sort of like if somebody, if somebody begins, like, you know, going to the bathroom in a litter box, and they start playing with catnip, and they start
Okay.
playing with cat toys, and they start eating
Right.
cat food,
Right.
and they start, and they start, you know, they start acting passive aggressive like cats do, and they
Right.
start acting shady like cats, you know. You know, the thing is, that's going to make, you know, that's shaping their will to be like that of a cat, you
Right.
know. And the thing is, it's the same thing that raunchy music, raunchy
Mhm.
movies,
Mhm.
you know, using bad language, hanging around the wrong crowd of people, which are all things that we don't like to hear in our society.
Mhm.
But the thing, you know, you mentioned the entertainment industry earlier, and the thing is, the entertainment industry is one of those things, for most of us, one of that might be the single greatest impact on the will of the average American
Right.
that exists,
Right.
you
Because
know. And
everyone has
so,
access,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah,
everyone has access to that, right?
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And people spend so much time being entertained. So the real question that people have to ask is what are the things in my life
Mhm.
that are shaping my will, you know.
Mhm.
And to become aware of those things, and then think about, and think about, well, what are those things going to shape my will into becoming? Are those things going to shape my will to become more godly, to become, are they going to shape my will to be more intelligent? Are they going to shape my will to 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 be a more interesting person? Or are those things going to are those things going to shape my will to be more animalistic, or to become like a criminal, or to exist, or to be governed, or to become more carnal, you know, or to be, or yeah, or just become more violent, you know.
Right. Right.
And I think that's the problem of the society that we're living in today, is that people aren't aware of that, because people think that their ego is in control of things,
Right.
but in reality, it's their will
Right.
that's in control, which totally bypasses their ego,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Well,
And I think fundamentally, I think that's the problem with the whole philosophy of Masonry, is that
right.
it it makes people think that somehow their will is completely neutral,
Right.
you know. And that it doesn't, you know, that it doesn't, that all that matters is that you're kind of respecting other people, and that you're being tolerant, and that you're,
Right.
you know. But the thing is, one of the worst things in the world you can do is to tolerate, it is to tolerate, thing is to tolerate non-truth, you know.
Right. Right.
Like, you know, you think about, you know, one thing I like to think about is the Spanish when they arrived in Mexico, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
um Now, I'm not, the Spanish didn't do everything 100% right,
Right.
by any means. But the thing is, when they saw the Aztecs doing human sacrifices
Mhm.
and ripping out the beating hearts of people,
Mhm.
in the name of the gods,
Mhm.
they put an end to it. They said,
Right.
this has got to stop.
Right.
But the good parts of Aztec culture, the beautiful parts of it remained, you
Right.
know.
Right.
Um, so, but they said these intolerable immoral acts, they cannot continue. We've got to put an
Yes.
end to them.
Yes.
So the thing is, you got to think about witnessing those human sacrifices. What did that do to the Aztecs' wills?
Right.
And then that disappearing, what
Yeah.
what impact did the absence of that have on the wills of those Aztecs? And it's the same way, like, the the this last so it seems like, just in recent memory,
Mhm.
almost every Super Bowl concert that I can remember has had some kind of satanic symbolism in it, with the exception of this last one, where they had, all the East Coast and West Coast rappers and stuff.
Right. Right. Snoop and
Yeah,
50 Cent
yeah.
and all
Now, I didn't notice any like satanic symbolism at that one. Like,
that.
it was just them, like, kind of like rap battling and stuff. But the thing is, like, all the previous ones, they parade out like the Eye of Osiris, and all kinds of wicked symbolism, and they're doing that they're parading those symbols out to try to conform people's wills.
Right.
You know?
Right. Right. Wow, man. I never thought about that, bro. But you know what? My my daughter is here now, and
Okay.
she's yelling, asking for me. Uh, but I really enjoyed this, man. This was really, it was eye-opening. But it was also fun. I enjoyed
Yes.
I enjoyed this conversation because I never, like I said before, for me, sort of a it was sort of a always in the realm of conspiracy. You're thinking about like the
Yeah.
Illuminati, and everybody
Yeah.
talks.
It's just people that are wearing tinfoil hats and stuff.
Yeah, just be where to,
That
or they and they got the what do they call it? Like the Fez hat in the
Yes, yeah,
little
yeah, yeah,
hat.
yeah, yeah, with the
You know
with
what
the
I
little
mean?
golden rope thing.
Yeah, yeah, and they're wearing the coats, and brother so and so, how are you? I'm good, brother so and so. Now the meeting will begin. Or you think about it like, oh man, I sure would like to be a part of that, because you see the gold ring, with
Yes.
the what's that? The ruler in the
Yeah, the little compass with the G in the middle of it.
yeah, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I can understand how people can be enticed by that. But this is why you always got to be, you know, what does the Bible say, man? You know, you gotta study to show thyself. No, that's not the one. You know, anyways, but I mean the Bible warns us of these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we have to do our due diligence, you know, and also I think a certain level of maturity is needed,
Yes.
to come to understand these things, and things like that. So, anyways, I'm really glad we had this conversation, man. And
Oh, me too, Shannon, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
yeah, brother. All right, man. It was good talking to you as always.
Oh, you too, brother.
All right.